Hello, Billy. It's been a while.
It
Goodness
has. So nice to see
gracious.
you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. It's been a lifetime, actually. We caught up with you in Swampscott, home of some pretty famous people. Bill Mazakowski, Governor Baker, my old buddy. Yeah. So, what a great place to grow up. Hey, tell folks, where you come from, what you've been through, and then we'll get into the work later on.
Sure. Yeah, like you said, I grew up in Swampscott, Massachusetts, which is a suburb about 10 miles north of Boston. Big athletic sort of community. A lot of good athletes have come out of that. And so I played a bunch of sports growing up as a kid. They had a really successful baseball and football programs historically. Stan Bondalevich was a legendary coach that your friend probably played for back in the day. And just that was part of my life growing up, and wound up graduating from Swampscott High School. Went down to Davidson College in North Carolina, which is where you and I met initially. But it was a wonderful place to grow up, and it definitely shaped me.
Yeah. What made you go to Davidson real quick?
I got recruited to play baseball there. Was the first I had heard of it. Super tiny, as you're well aware, very small school in North Carolina. I had never heard of it
But
growing up.
but 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 top five liberal arts. I mean, it's
Yeah, wonderful school. And
yeah,
I was
lots of great people have gone there.
looking for a really good academic school, a place I could compete at a high level athletically, and so it was just the right fit for me at the time.
Stefan Curry has taken that little known school thing right off the table.
Yeah, yeah, he sure has. He sure has. Yeah, he put us on the map in a lot of ways athletically.
Yeah, that's beautiful, beautiful. Hey, listen, I didn't know a lot about your internship at PCG. I think you worked up in Boston in college.
I did. Yeah, it was after, I can't remember, maybe after my freshman year. It was one of my first couple of years of college, and went back home for the summer. My folks were still living there, and interned at PCG, and that was sort of my first real world, quote unquote,
Yeah.
real world job, and got exposed to a lot of things, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. And it was eye opening for me for sure.
Yeah, we really appreciate your help. And then as I remember it, when you graduated from Davidson, you went to work at the Charlotte office?
I did. I worked
Oh,
worked out of the
it's
Charlotte office for about a year and a half at PCG, and that was the real world. Right, no longer an internship. So that was my first real job, and coming out of 4 years at Davidson, locally played 4 years of baseball there, and so had to figure out kind of what I wanted to be when I grow up, and that was my first taste of it. Yeah, I was very grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah, I remember you coming in the office and saying, Tony, listen, I appreciate it, but I'm heading off. And we thought, ooh, where's he going? McKinsey, Accenture, I don't forget the name of it back then. But, and you go, I'm going to go work in baseball. And I went, what?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I couldn't shake it. I couldn't shake the bug. I kind of had that gnawing at me ever since I graduated, and it stuck with me. I can look back on it now, and realize that was just sort of in my blood. It was part of who I was, whether that was what I was doing for a living or not. That really drove me, and so yeah, I was incredibly appreciative of the opportunity, and kind of from there, kind of graduated to the School of Hard Knocks, trying to claw my way into professional baseball.
Well, and then you became in the general manager's office in Diamondbacks?
Yeah, so I started with the Indians, actually, now the Guardians. That was my first full time job, scouting there. Had an opportunity from there to go to New York City and work in the commissioner's office. So I did a few years there. I kind of equate that to my version of business school, dealing with a lot of sort of high level league economics, competitive balance issues, and what have you, reporting to all 30 ownership groups. From there, I went to Arizona, was the assistant GM with the Diamondbacks, and then made a lateral move over to Atlanta for the last 6 years of my career with the Braves.
That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. Listen, I'd sit here and talk to you all day about that stuff, but get us real quick to how you got transitioned into No One Is Watching, because that's ultimately what reconnected me and you. Is I'm a big fan. What happened there, and tell us
Yeah,
about
sure.
that.
I'm Billy Ryan, and this is the No One Is Watching podcast, where we explore high performing teams, individuals, and leaders and dig deep to find out what makes them tick. This show highlights the DNA shared by elite performers, the process by which they leverage that talent, and ultimately helps you apply those lessons to your own life, business, or team. I appreciate that. Yeah, it kind of came out of COVID, like a lot of things did. We were all sitting around with a lot of time on our hands, and I started writing. I've always kind of enjoyed writing, and so it was probably more for therapeutic reasons for myself more than anything, just to get some things out of my brain and into the world. And that evolved over time. It turned into a blog. It's since turned into a podcast. and ultimately became a coaching practice, a leadership coaching
Not
practice.
to be a fan, but man, you've talked to some really great people. I mean, just really, really impressive folks.
Yeah, it's funny. I never had any aspirations of having a podcast, but I was talking to a friend. I've always sought out conversations like this, where I can get better, where I can learn something beyond just sort of the surface level. And whether I was recording them or not, I was having these conversations. And I was talking to a buddy one day. He goes, "Hey, man, I know you're looking to kind of, sort of put some stuff out there and see what happens. You should start recording these conversations. They're super
Right.
interesting." And, a lot of it obviously leans sort of sports oriented, but I'm of the mind that if you're in a room with the top 200 people in the world, whether they're athletes or chefs or musicians, you should probably pay attention because they're doing
Hey,
something
it's
right. And
still
there's a lot to learn.
competition. It's competition at PCG. It's competition. If you are with, Planned Parenthood, it's competition. If you're the Land of Braves, I mean,
I'm sure.
everybody's got to fight for survival and to thrive. And so I
Yes.
think you've tapped into that, and that's what makes it so interesting. Um, you know, uh, if we can, let's just get on down to work a little bit, unless you feel like who's the best person you ever interviewed?
Oh, that's a great question. I've been fortunate to talk to some really good people. There's a woman that I spoke to that didn't probably get the attention at the time, but just has a fascinating background. Her name's Marty Evans. She when she retired from the Navy, she was a Rear Admiral in the Navy, the highest ranking woman in the military. Post military career, I may not get the sequence right, but she was the CEO of the Red Cross, the
No.
president of Girl Scouts of America, and the interim commissioner of the LPGA Tour. So just a remarkable path,
This
remarkable
gives me
career.
goosebumps thinking that you could be an audience with that caliber. We went to Annapolis one year for year-end, planning session, and you see how they build them. I mean, they are all about staff development, team building. I mean, it's everything that a competitor cares about. But
Yeah, there's been a
listen,
lot of the merging between military and sports sort of just happened organically for me because you start talking to folks in this world. There's one group that can walk into a major league clubhouse or locker room and command attention, and it tends to be the military. And the
really,
reason for that is all these shared values of being part of something bigger than yourself, competing, win, lose, life, death. Really just committing to something. And so there's always parallels. So eventually you start having conversations like these, and it inevitably more merges from sports into military and in business.
well, that's exciting. Listen, let me move us, and so we can be helpful to the group at PCG and maybe somewhere other places. You started No One Is Watching. You sent me an email talking about competition, corporate strengthening. Bringing value to anybody who wants to compete. It just happened to coincide when PCG was in the throes of debating where should people work. You have people 100% remote. You have people 100% in person now becoming, and then you have everything in the continuum between. So we're fighting. We're fighting and kicking the can down the road as best we can for the last 2 or 3 years, 4 years, and ultimately, what set up this listening project that you led for us was PCG's corporate headquarters at 148th Street. The ceiling started leaking and the air conditioning kept working. So all of a sudden, this idea of we have a choice to just keep following. No, it's real hardcore. We're going to move this office. Where are we going to move it to? Do we even need one? And if we do, what's the right size? So a theoretical academic conversation turned into a very practical one. Do you want to write a multi-million-dollar, multi-year lease for real estate, knowing currently only 20 people a week come into the office?
Right.
So now it's not just debating about I don't want to sit at home and work in my pajamas versus I want to get in a car and commute. It's real dollars, real business decision making. And so we as PCG always does, we go right in there and start thinking about, gosh, what's the most competitive thing we can do. And there's a lot of input that comes into that, and we proceed with care and caution. We're going to read every article. We're going to watch our competitors. We're going to listen to our clients. We're going to let research do its thing because we value research-backed decision making. And then on some Monday call, you know, we were talking about, so what are we going to do? And I think somebody in the room just said, well, why don't we ask the folks who are, our best and brightest that are on the front line, closest to the customer, what would help them best serve their customer and make us as competitive as possible while the whole world is topsy-turvy right now. And so that's when I reached out to you. And I really, really think that it's kind of you to take on this assignment. I told you, before you got going, it was going to be, we were going to try to do it in 2 weeks. And what's it been now, but
A little bit longer.
yeah, Billy, thank you for putting up with PCG and our kind of studious way we like to do things, and you tolerating that, yet really driving us to an end product. Thank you very much. But unless you think I should say something else, I'm pretty happy to just kind of like turn it over to you and let you kind of just explain how you design the project. And then once you get done with that, we'll take a pause, and then we'll have another little section of this podcast where, okay, so what did you learn? So first is, how'd the project work, or how'd you design it? And then what'd you learn, and where are we going from there? How's
Sure. Yeah. No, happy to run it down. And if I leave anything out, feel free to just interrupt me. But I was excited about the opportunity to engage with PCG for a variety of reasons. Right? Obviously, my affinity for the firm going back to, when I was just a kid, and the experience that I got over multiple sort of waves of that personally. Particularly looking back on it now, I realized that some of the things you were talking about were genuine. You did care, right? The firm did want to hear voices. And there's a difference in my mind between listening and waiting for your turn to talk. And this felt like you were listening, and you wanted to listen more. No. And as someone from the outside looking in, there's in my opinion, a lot of value in that. Sometimes there's also some challenges that come with that, right? Who's this guy? This is like the Office Space movie. Bob's the consultant coming in, and like, this guy's out to get me. So we had some hurdles to get over early. The getting to know each other period. But I was excited about it. And my overall approach was going to be to take it from the broad end of the funnel down to the narrow, and distill it down at the end. So I wanted to be as I don't want to say generic, but as non-leading as possible initially. I gave him an overview of what we were trying to accomplish, saying, hey, here's what leadership is looking to do. They're trying to determine the best competitive strategy for PCG with respect to their workplace environment. It wasn't, hey, raise your hand for working remotely or in the office, right? We weren't going to try to lead the witness or oversimplify things. So we built out a survey to send out to the group that had been selected. You took a group of leaders at PCG, a small subset group.
Yeah. Can we take a little break there just to explain that? Sure. We knew that we needed to listen to a group of people that would be respected and peer-to-peer known. And so we went to some shareholders. We asked the shareholders to make some recommendations. The recommendations led to us assembling about 25 people on the original invite list. And if I'm cutting into your speech, you can tell me and be quiet. But representatives from each of the 4 practice areas, representative from the corporate departments, and then the list kind of expanded, and then it kind of contracted. And I think we still ended up with 25 folks that were going to walk down this journey with you.
Yes.
So I just to give everybody out there in the listening audience.
Yeah. So that was the population we were dealing with. It was a good cross section, of geography, practice area, you name it, obviously that you all selected. From there, I just wanted to kind of get general impressions. So we built out a survey. We wanted it to have enough direction that it was going to lead us down the path we wanted to go without being sort of too leading to the witness, so to speak. So we administered that survey. We've got a wide array of responses, as you would imagine. This is a topic, not just at PCG, but this is a topic, obviously, that there's an inherent emotional response, right? You're gonna view it through your lens, what you want to do, what works for you and your family and your life, and blah blah blah, right? That's human nature. So we tried to preface it with, try to take off your employee hat and put on your CEO hat in this, and run make these decisions, cast these votes, offer these opinions through that lens, as you are running this company and you are responsible for the success of this firm 10 years from now.
And act like your career is dependent on it.
Correct.
Because it is.
Because in a lot of way it does, right? And I think the group, it took a little getting used to, but I think the group really embraced that. They understood. I know if it were me, I would take that as a big badge of honor, right? I've been hand selected to have a seat at the table and to offer an opinion. And we're gonna go through all this effort. Presumably they're gonna read it and listen to it and ingest
Braid it in. Yep.
Correct. So we took the survey, a lot of feedback. We kind of hacked through that, took it all in, read through it. From there, we got, sort of a broad strokes of what folks felt. We tried to wean out some of the things that felt more like feelings and put that into one bucket. We put some feedback in another bucket that was maybe pointed to some inconsistencies with maybe they had said earlier in the survey. It was a little disjointed, and challenged them, not in a confrontational way, but just saying, hey, you said X, but you also said Y. So talk me through what that means. So it went from wide into the funnel to a little bit more narrow. We got down to the point where we were able to sort of synthesize their feedback into a summary. We distributed that to the group and said, tell me what we missed. Here's what you told us. This is the feedback that you offered. We went through that sort of a few different iterations of that to get it
nice,
to get it cogent. From there, we shared that feedback with a smaller group to sort of put it at their feet and say, here's what your teams are telling us. And I should take a step back. That smaller practice group was selected based on individual practice area leads because we had ingested the general feedback at that point, and right. Now I felt like the best, most effective way was going to be, okay, let's flip that entirely on its head. You've put on your CEO hat. You've done it for the betterment of the firm. Now pretend we're going to fracture all these business units off into individual businesses, and you're in charge of running that business.
Nice.
So what is best for your business? How can you be most successful? I don't care if the other business units disagree with you. How do you need to run your brand?
Your competitive strategy for the way you operate. And we know each of the practice areas and even the corporate department have their own personalities. They have their own competitive style.
Right. And the goal all along here was to get to sort of this one PCG answer, knowing that there was going to be a ton of nuance. There was going to be not a one-size-fit-all solution, but we were trying to get us 80% of the way there if we could. And so we went wide at first, and then we went super specific. The hope being that you're going to come out of there with 4 or 5 nuanced, specific, pointed answers or structures or strategies that you're then going to be able to take. I'm going to be able to zoom out and look at them and say, okay, and I'm going to pull out the commonalities, right? I'm going to set aside the things that may be in conflict with one another, get that group back together and say, here's what we're looking at. This is what you told us. This is how we have to run these individual businesses. And ultimately, if you squish together the commonalities, that really gives you the core of what you're going to try to do. Yeah. So that's where does that make sense?
Oh yeah. I like it. And I felt like people, as I watched from afar, really were trying to be helpful and on point for you, just to be available. Did you feel like people could speak their minds, that they could, without fear of the group eating them up, kind of get out what they felt? I mean,
yeah, no, that's always the challenge in something like this, right? Particularly when it's, hey, am I going to be recorded? Is this going to be, do I have to put my name to this? And so we took the tact initially, I conferred with you and we left it anonymous initially because we wanted, particularly in that broad end of the funnel, we wanted complete candor. And people can tell you, I've gone through a lot of these exercises, or I've done it internally with teams that I've been on. You do sort of this internal assessment and you can say, yeah, give me the harsh feedback. And then as soon as you hear the harsh feedback about yourself, you're like, wait a second, I don't like that. So it's hard to hear things about yourself that aren't complimentary.
Sure.
Right? So
which by the way is a little bit of why you got the job, right? Because you didn't feel attacked. You actually just gathered the information and off you went. Yep, go.
Yeah, I just wanted you all to get it right. I had no dog in the fight, right? And so there was inherent value in that. But yeah, to answer your question, I think they got over it after a few turns of it, which was deliberate, right? You're not going to get it perfect in the first time. Right. People are going to be holding back a little bit. They may not fully understand the ask. So after a time or two through, I think they started getting more comfortable, being more open and candid about it, understanding kind of where we were trying to steer this thing and
Mm-hmm.
where they could help shape it. So yeah, I'm very grateful and appreciative of the group that, if nothing else, took time out of their busy schedules to do it, but also did it in a candid way, in an open-ended, educational manner, right? I don't know all the nuances of your firm, so they had to educate me on some things that, hey, I know you were saying this, but that doesn't always make sense because of ABC. Got it.
Right.
Thank you.
And
So they
so
would
so I think y'all ended up with a product that you then sent back to all of the 25, and they blessed it, and then you sent it to the folks who the nominating Big Five, and they
correct.
blessed it. And
Yes.
at that, go ahead.
No, so yeah, we did exactly that. We took it, we got it, distilled it down to in as concise and cogent of a strategy as we could. I distributed to the group of 25 that helped shape that. And I said, give me your vote, right? You can vote no. You can say that we missed the mark. That's fine. But we got an overwhelming vote of support from what we distributed. From there, we took that to sort of the nominating board of 5 people that gave us the group of 25 and had the same conversation and said, here's
Nice.
what they, and it's worth noting, I suppose, that group of 5, that was the initial group that nominated the 25, that group of initial 5 did not participate in any of these surveys. They had no input. This was just, you pick your spokespeople and the people that are going to have a voice at the table, because you don't have one right now.
Right.
And so then at that point, they were brought back into the fold and said, here's what that group has told us. Here's what they said. And we went through an abbreviated version of the same exercise. What do you see? Where are the flaws? What do you like? You guys tell me where we're missing the mark. And, I think we certainly got to 80% of the way there, I think. And I would imagine, like anything else, I'm a big believer that there's elegance and simplicity. And so you were going to get sort of core principles, foundational things that are going to make sense to everybody every time. It's just the devil's in the details, right? You're going to have to go execute on that and make that fit for your practice.
At the end of all of this, what kind of became clear to me, just as an observer, was ultimately what the group needed to produce was answers to 2 questions that, if Bill was interviewed by Forbes magazine or CNN about what we're doing, he could respond in a pretty brief way. And those 2 questions were, what is PCG's overall approach to return to office, which is a generic label that we've got to, and the other one is, and so how's that going to work across the nation in all your practice areas? And so I feel like the end result was y'all created something that at least gave him a talking points. As you say, all the devil is in the details. And so tell us what is now, the answer that Bill might use to, kind of give people insight to how we're going to compete over the next, 3 to 5 years.
Sure. So you go from a fully remote virtual world that we've all been living in for the last several years, contrasted with brick and mortar offices in every state and every market that you're in, right? And so where do we meet in the middle on that? So what this group came up with, 2 things that I think are worth noting before we get into the details. One is there was a lot of feedback in the initial part of this process of, we just need to do what the clients need, what the clients want, right? Be client focused, 100%, right? Everybody agrees with that. But I challenged the group at that point to say, what does that mean? What does that mean for the client? What does that mean for PCG? What does that mean for you personally? And sometimes there's an element of, are those interests always aligned? Sometimes they're not. Generally speaking, they are, but just saying do whatever the client wants isn't necessarily a strategy, right? You have too many clients, You have too many locations. You've got to have sort of an operating, SOP to deal with. Generally speaking, this is how we're going to approach it. The other side of that coin is, you can't just listen to the employees, right? We want to value our employees, have a wonderful culture and a good workplace, and a place that people want to come work and want to stay forever. But you can't just prioritize that above everything else, because then you won't have a firm for people to come work at anyway, right? Because you'll have no clients. Right. So sort of balancing those 2 was the overall goal. And so where they came out ultimately was a model that revolved around roughly 5 regional hubs in addition to the Boston headquarters. So those hubs are to be determined, but sort of likely centered around airport hubs, likely focused around geography, client base, opportunities, staffing, all of sort of the logistical pieces. Those hubs, everything will revolve around that sort of regionally. So from hiring to training, to offsites internally and externally will be housed there rather than, hey, maybe we're going to go to Nashville and we're going to go rent out a whole hotel and use the conference room. We're actually going to use our hub in our office to host this. Yeah, we'll still need hotel rooms, but we're going to try to get people together as much as possible. That even for the folks who were extremely passionate that I've never been in an office, I will never go back to an office, there's no value in going to an office. Even those people acknowledged there was an element lacking, that human engagement, that beehive environment that you're allowed to, that people flourish in. You can't replicate that remotely. It's just not possible. So they acknowledge that, particularly with junior staff, saying folks that maybe are earlier in their careers or were hired during this last 5 years.
I'm telling you, if you don't believe there's value in a beehive, you've never tasted honey. You know, that these young kids coming out of school, coming up through, COVID, recent college graduates, there is just something valuable about being in a space together. Sure, you and I are doing this virtually, and quite frankly, I think there's a ton of benefit to that, and that will never go away either. But I think we somehow have lost the memory of how valuable it is to be in the beehive.
Yeah, I agree, and that point was made. Right, there are some folks that don't know what they're missing out on. I think back to when I graduated college. Had you just sent me a laptop and told me to go work in my living room, I would have failed miserably. I would have no idea what to do. I didn't know how to act like a professional. I didn't know what sort of methodologies to use, what sort of routine I needed, and so there's that. But there was also the point that sort of mid-career, late career folks, didn't matter where you were in your career or in your position or in your business unit. There was that benefit from being together. And it's not just sort of some will call it squishy, right? The team building, the cultural component, which I'm a fervent advocate of. But there is real-time problem solving that can go on. If you task me with a project at noon today and you say, hey, I need this on my desk by 9 a.m. and you think it's going to take me an hour and a half to complete, and you do it virtually, you don't know that I spent it all night and I didn't sleep because I was so wildly inefficient in what I was doing, but you still got it on your desk at 9 a.m. So you're going to be happy and you're not going to care. You're not going to ask any questions. So there was that element of like, you're going to be able to sort of support your teammates better. You're going to see strengths and weaknesses. You're going to be able to interface in a way that is authentic and real. So then when you sit in front of a client, you're not meeting a colleague for the first time in person at the same time, right? You have had chances to have debates, to go have lunches and things like that. So the 5 regional offices was the model, and that was really going to be supplemented through intentional, thoughtful, strategic in-person engagement, strategy sessions, leadership development workshops, you name it, training, onboarding, all of these things would sort of revolve and orbit around those regional hubs. And the other big, the word intentional was used. It was the word of the entire project, right?
You're not coming in just to come in. You're not just trying to hit a quota. You're being very intentional about why you're bringing people together and making sure that it's worth the additional expense, right? Now we're going to take travel expense up, which means we better get, output, commensurate to justify that.
Exactly. And part of that was all the things I touched on, right? Building a stronger team. You can't do that in the same way remotely as you can do it in person. It doesn't have to be every day in person, but there needs to be a human contact engagement portion of that. But then there's also the training and development piece of that, and sharpening each other, sharpening younger staff, having them follow certain protocols or maybe follow mentors, what have you. So there was a lot that gets rolled into this sort of in-person engagement. There's a million different directions you can go, and that's a conversation you all are going to continue to have internally. And the third sort of leg to that stool was just the client piece of that, right? And so how do we put ourselves in a position to serve the client at the highest possible level? And so we've solved sort of the internal logistics of it. And moving forward, it was about transparency with the client. So it was, if you're going to write a new proposal, here's what we are suggesting and asking as far as in-person engagement, and here's why. So you're sort of spelling out, you're putting value in. We see there's value in interfacing with you one-on-one in person. We understand that you may not be in the office 5 days a week. You may not be in the office at all. So we're not going to make a blanket statement saying you need to meet once a month with us in your headquarters and blah, 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 right? It's going to be, we're going to take our cues from you. But by putting that out there, putting it in paper, you're going to say, we value, we think there's prioritizing. We're prioritizing because we think there's value for us and for you to allow us to serve you at the highest possible level.
Perfect.
So
Perfect.
that is the broad stroke sort of elevator pitch of what they came away with.
Nice. I thought it was exciting, the gap, being able to articulate the gap between what we, from a strategic standpoint, want to do and tactically how to do it. That's where I started getting emails was, people just wanting to get to the tactics, and just, what does this mean for? And I was going, whoa. We're trying to answer a question. What is your competitive strategy with workforce placement, and how's it going to work so that you become more competitive and more able to serve your clients? And I think you got us way down the road, Billy. And I'm telling you, I watched you, and I know it wasn't easy. I know everybody's hearts were in the right place, but it's just hard work. And so I thank you and the folks that kind of worked with you. And I feel like we got a framework for asking important questions and for making important decisions. So thank you, and I'll let you wrap it up now because. Man, I finished this with gratitude. Thank you.
No, that's a two-way street. I appreciate it as well. Not just you, but everybody that participated, their candor, their patience, their willingness to engage. I do feel like we came away with a good product. And I'm a believer that you've got to ask yourself the why first. And this whole exercise was around the why, right? We want to be competitive at PCG. We want to look 10 years down the road and put ourselves in a position to get to that brass ring that we're reaching for. And I'm a believer that if you can answer the why, which is not always easy, but if you can answer the why effectively and succinctly, every other decision after that becomes exponentially easier for you because it either fits in that box or it doesn't. And I think that we've gotten to a point, whether this is the direction you wind up going or not, that there's really not any holes in the argument, so to speak. There's always that 20% exceptions, which is sort of by design in this exercise. But 80% of that in the middle, it's pretty locked in tight. And if you agree with the why, then everything else after that should make a whole lot of sense.
Perfect. Well, hey, thank you, buddy. And look forward to giving you updates on how we do.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear it. Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you.